Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners. Once again, I welcome you back to our course of microeconomics and its applications. We are presently studying the unit 4 of this course, which is concerned with the cost analysis, and today is going to be the third lecture of this unit. I am Dr. Aparna Samudra, who is the course coordinator as well as the presenter of this particular lecture. So learners, let us have a look as to what all we are going to discuss in today's lecture. The first thing we will be talking about is that what do you mean by a firm and what is the basic objective of a firm. Thereafter we will understand that how do we derive the equilibrium of a firm which has an objective in mind. And then we will understand the short run and long run supply function. So let us start with today's lecture. As I told you, the first thing that we will be discussing today is that what is exactly a firm and what objectives does a firm keep in mind. Let us understand what is a firm. We say a firm is an institution that buys or hires various factors of production and organizes them to produce and sell goods and services. So an institution that is either buying factors of production or hiring these factors of production. Why? Because it wants to organize all these factors of production to produce and sell goods or services. So we say a firm is basically an independent unit of producing goods and services for sale. Many times students get confused between the concept of a firm and industry. Now these two are different things. We have just seen that firm is basically an independent unit which is hiring or buying factors of production, organizing them in order to produce goods and services which it wants to sell in future or in the marketplace. Whereas when we say an industry is a group of firms which are doing a similar kind of business. So let us take an example. Maruti is a firm which is producing automobiles. But there are many other firms which are also producing automobiles. Let us say Hyundai is there, let us say Kia Motors is there, let us say Honda is there. Together all of these firms will make an industry. So please keep this difference between firm and industry in mind, that firm is an independent unit whereas an industry is a group of the firms which are doing a similar kind of business. So I understand that this definition of your firm is understood by you now. So a firm is an institution that is buying or hiring factors of production, organizing them to produce and sell goods and services. Right. Now what are the objectives of the firm? The main goal or the objective of the firm is to maximize the profits. Whereas there are of course a few economists who say apart from this, firms also have an other objective of, for example, sales maximization, or they may be having an objective of shareholders' wealth maximization. But the primary aim is to maximize its profits. Okay, now what are profits? We already have discussed earlier that profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. What is total revenue? Total revenue is the price of the product that you are selling multiplied by the number of units that the firm is selling. So P into Q is your total revenue. And cost, we have already discussed in this unit that cost of production is dependent on how much units we are or how much output we are or the firm is producing. So profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. And we are assuming that the objective of the firm is to maximize the difference between revenue and the total cost. We have already discussed the concept of revenue earlier in the units of this particular course, but let me just recap it for you once more. One concept of revenue which we have just discussed is total revenue. That is the total amount received from the sale of firms, goods and services. And how do we derive total revenue? Total revenue is price of the product multiplied by the quantity sold. So P into Q is our total revenue. The second concept of revenue is average revenue, which is basically total revenue per unit of output sold. That is, what on an average I am earning by selling each unit of output. This we get, your average revenue we get by dividing total revenue by the quantity sold. So P into Q, that is total revenue, divided by Q gives us our average revenue. Right? So average revenue PQ divided by Q is equal to the price. So average revenue is the same as the price. And also average revenue curve is the same as the demand curve. The third concept which we have already discussed earlier is of marginal revenue. What is marginal revenue? Just for the purpose of revision, we are saying it is the change in the total revenue. Why? Because one extra unit is being sold. So if a company is selling one extra unit, what is the change in the total revenue? That change in total revenue is called as the marginal revenue. So marginal revenue is what? Change in total revenue because there is a change in the one unit of quantity being sold. Right. So these are the three concepts of revenue which we will be using henceforth: total revenue, average revenue and marginal revenue. Now, since we have understood that a firm's objective is to maximize its profit, and the profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost, the first question the firm may confront is that how much should I produce, or how much should the firm produce so that its profit gets maximized. Because why is the firm producing? Firm is saying that I am there in operation because I want to maximize my profits. And profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. So the question which a firm has to answer is that what should be the level of output which we need to produce so that my profit is maximized. So the point in where the firm's profit gets maximized, we call it as the firm's equilibrium or the equilibrium of the firm. Now, in order to derive the firm's equilibrium or that level of output at which the firm's profit is maximized, this can be done by two approaches. So the profit maximization equilibrium, determination of the output at which the profit of the firm gets maximized, can be done by two approaches. One is your total approach, other is called as marginal approach. Let us discuss both the approaches. And since we are talking about profit is the difference between revenue and cost. This means that we need to understand the revenue curve, we need to understand the cost curve, and from the both of these curves, that is the revenue curve and the cost curve, we will derive the profit curve. Okay, so what is our objective right now? We are intending to find that level of output at which the firm's profit is getting maximized. Two approaches we have just said. In order to do that, there are two approaches. One is the total approach, other is the marginal approach. Okay, so let us start with the total approach. Right, now this particular situation is showing you two curves. One is the total cost curve, other is the total revenue curve. Right, and we are measuring on the vertical axis revenue, cost and profit, and on the horizontal axis we are measuring output. So both of them are changing as we are changing your level of output. Okay, so how do we see this? We are seeing that this total revenue line is a straight linear line. For the purpose of simplification, we have taken it to be a straight linear line. As your output is increasing, your total revenue is increasing. Similarly, total cost curve, if you remember, we had said it is something like an inverted S, right? So, total revenue and total cost, both of these are going to derive our profit curve. So, the difference between total revenue and total cost is the profit. Now we will see it graphically that how it is there. So we've just said that profit is basically the difference between total revenue and total cost. So this means this particular gap, the difference between total revenue, which is this red line, and total cost, which is the blue curve, the difference between them is the profit. Right? Why? Because if you see it graphically, your revenue is above the total cost. Means the firm is earning greater revenue and its cost is lesser than that. So revenue is more than cost, means this is the situation of profit. Okay. Similarly, but if you see again this situation where your total cost is above total revenue, what it is going to be? It is your loss. That is, the firm is incurring more cost and it is earning less revenue. So the firm is having losses. Right. So as I told you that the profit, coming back to the profit is the difference between revenue and cost, and profit curve will begin from the negative axis. Why? Because if you see this, earlier when the firm is producing, it is earning certain losses. Right? Let us see this graph, this Q1. Till this point where your total cost curve, where I am highlighting this laser pointer, your total cost is greater and total revenue is less. Therefore, this means cost is more, revenue is less, means there is a loss, or the loss means negative profits. So profit curve, which is shown by this green curve, is negative till Q1, indicating that before Q1, if it whatever the level of production before Q1 is, the firm is incurring losses. So at any level of output less than OQ1, the firm is incurring losses. So this is the area of your loss. This loss, the difference between TR and TC, is represented by a negative profit curve. Okay, now at point A, when your level of output is Q1, your TR becomes equal to TC. Means the firm is earning zero profit, or there is no profit, no loss. Break-even point, many times we call it as. There is no profit, there is no loss. Then after Q1, the firm starts earning profits. After OQ1, when it increases the level of output, since your cost curve comes below the revenue curve, the firm starts earning profits. So this particular situation, after point A on your TR curve, the firm is earning profits. The difference between TRTC we are saying is your profits. The point where this gap is the highest, that means the maximum profit are being earned. So if you see this OQ star on the graph, the profit curve is the highest at OQ star. Right? Please pay attention to the figure. You see your green curve, which is the profit curve. It is rising after OQ1, becomes maximum at OQ star. This means if the firm is producing OQ star level of output, the profit for the firm is maximum. So this becomes your maximum point corresponding to the maximum difference between TR and TC. Okay, now again when you keep on producing more than OQ star at point B, again the profits become zero. And what do we see? That after this, if the firm keeps on producing, its profit will turn into losses because its total cost will be more than the total revenue. So what does the total approach tells us? Total approach tells us see the difference between the total cost and total revenue. Wherever the TR minus TC, the profit is highest, that is the level of output the firm should produce so that it earns the maximum profit. Right, so that corresponds, for example, in this OQ star corresponds to that level of output at which the firm is earning maximum profit, and a rational firm would like to maximize this profit, that it would definitely like to produce more than OQ1 so that it earns greater profit. And once it reaches its OQ star point, it means that it would like to stop somewhere here or keep on producing till this point because its profits are getting maximized. So that's the total approach. The other approach we said is the marginal approach, wherein we will be taking into consideration the marginal revenue of the firm and the marginal cost of the firm. Okay, when we talk about your marginal approach, we have already discussed what is marginal revenue and already we have talked about what is marginal cost. Marginal revenue is the extra revenue earned by selling one extra unit. Marginal cost is the extra cost which the firm incurs because it is producing one extra unit. Okay, also your marginal revenue is the slope of your total revenue. Marginal cost is the slope of your total cost curve. So when you differentiate mathematically the total revenue with respect to the quantity sold, we get marginal revenue. When we differentiate mathematically the first derivative of the total cost with respect to the quantity produced will give us the marginal cost. So when we are using the marginal approach and trying to determine that what should be the profit maximizing output the firm should produce so that it reaches the equilibrium, there are two conditions we have to understand. The first order condition or the necessary condition is that the marginal revenue of the firm should become to equal to the marginal cost. That is, whatever extra the firm is earning by selling one extra unit should be equal to the extra cost of producing that unit. Right? So extra revenue that you earn by selling that extra unit, the extra cost of production of that unit should be equal to it. So your marginal revenue should be equal to the marginal cost. So that's the first thing we need to understand when we are deriving the profit maximizing output level of the firm. The second condition says that the slope of your marginal revenue curve should be less than the marginal cost curve. Or in other words, once your MR becomes equal to MC, the marginal cost curve should start rising after it. Once MR becomes equal to MC, this means that that is the point graphically where marginal revenue and marginal cost are meeting each other. They are intersecting each other. So that you have determined. So you say this is the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. But is it the only condition? No. The second condition says is that once you find that point where marginal revenue becomes equal to marginal cost, your marginal cost curve should start rising, or the slope of your marginal revenue curve should be less than the slope of the marginal cost curve. Okay, if the second order condition, which is the sufficient condition, is not satisfied, that is, if the slope of the marginal revenue curve is greater than the marginal cost curve, we are talking about loss maximization. That is, we are stopping at a point where you are saying that after this, your revenue will keep on falling and your cost will keep on rising. So, two things we need to understand when we are deriving the equilibrium of the firm using the marginal approach is that first of all, determine the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, and that is the necessary condition. Then you go to the second order condition, which is the sufficient condition, which says that your slope of MR should be less than the slope of MC curve, or MC curve, marginal cost curve, should start rising after it cuts your marginal revenue curve. Let us see what happens if this does not happen. We are saying that profit maximization is occurring where MR becomes equal to MC. If MR is greater than MC, what should the firm do? It should increase the output. Why? Because every extra unit it is selling is earning them more than the extra cost of producing that. So when marginal revenue is more than marginal cost, the firm needs to produce more. Whereas when marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, the firm should decrease the amount of output it is producing. Why? Because it is spending more on production of that extra unit and earning less from that extra unit. Right? If I'm producing, let us say, fifth unit, and my extra cost of producing a marginal cost of fifth is, let us say, 10 rupees. Whereas when I sell this extra unit, I get, let us say, 5 rupees. Means my extra earning is less than my marginal cost or my extra cost of producing. No rational firm should do that. Therefore, in that situation, the firm should be decreasing the output it is producing. So, we are saying that the equilibrium therefore is achieved when the marginal revenue becomes equal to the marginal cost, because that's where the profit is getting maximized. Okay, so let us see this figure to understand. We have just said that a firm is said to be in equilibrium when the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. We will be taking two situations. One is a perfect market, other is an imperfect market. Perfect market, for now you just understand. We will be of course doing it in detail in the subsequent unit. Perfect market is a market where there are large number of sellers and selling identical products. Therefore, none of the seller has the control over the market price. So all the firms will sell at the price which is determined by the market. Therefore, the marginal revenue of the firm becomes equal to the average revenue, and the price P star is a straight horizontal line showing that every firm is going to sell at the same price. Okay, marginal cost curve is a U-shaped curve. The point where your MR becomes equal to MC, this is the equilibrium. So what does it show? That MR curve, which is horizontal in case of a perfect market, when MR becomes equal to MC, the firm should be producing Q star level of output, and this level of output will maximize its profit. What do you see after this point? MC is rising, showing that your slope of MR is less than the slope of marginal cost. When we talk about imperfect market, in that case, no firm has complete control over the market. So the MR curve is downward sloping. It is different from your demand curve, and your marginal revenue curve is downward sloping like this. Right? So this is imperfect market where your demand curve or your AR curve is downward sloping. MR curve is also downward sloping. But whether it is perfect market or it is imperfect market, the conditions for firm's equilibrium will remain the same. That is, MR should be equal to MC. So what do we see here is that MR is getting equal to MC at the point of Q star, and the firm is selling product at P star. So, but again, you see after Q star, MC is rising. So, two things we have to understand when we talk about equilibrium of the firm. One, MR should be equal to MC, and marginal cost curve should start rising, or your marginal cost should start rising after this Q star. Right? So, this will give you the equilibrium of the firm. Coming quickly to the next topic, that is of short-run supply curve. Okay, now we all know that in short run, the firm may face two types of cost, fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost is that cost which is there even when the firm is not producing anything. Remember, fixed cost curve was always there. It was never zero. Okay, so, if it produces no output, let us say it is not producing any output. So, its loss is equal to the fixed cost because it is not making anything. So, there is no variable cost. Whatever cost it has is equal to the fixed cost. So, if the firm is not producing anything, its loss is equal to the fixed cost. So the optimal decision is to produce no output if the price is less than the minimum of the firm's average variable cost. Why? Because if the firm is earning loss, that is its revenue is less and its cost is more. If it doesn't produce anything, it will only incur the loss equal to its fixed cost. But if the price of the product is so low that the firm is not able to to cover even its average variable cost, that is the cost it is spending on the variable inputs, even if it is not able to cover that cost, the firm optimally should not produce because it is paying out of its own pocket. If it stops production, loss will reduce because it will not have to pay for these variable factors of production. So, when we talk about the supply curve of a firm in short run, we say if price is less than the minimum of the firm's AVC, then the optimal output for the firm is zero. That is, if the price of the product and at which it is selling, the firm is a price taker particularly, if the price is so low that the firm is unable to cover even its average variable cost, the firm should stop producing. So that will become its optimal level. However, if the price is greater, even if the firm is making losses, if the price is greater than the minimum average variable cost, then the optimal output, which is let us say Y star, it should be such that the price is equal to the short-run marginal cost at this particular output level Y star. So as after this point, your rising portion of the marginal cost curve will become the short-run supply curve. So what we intend to say is that for a firm in short run, the supply curve is the rising portion of its marginal cost curve. Let us understand this graphically, whatever we have said. Sorry. Let us say this is your marginal cost curve. This is the average total cost curve, which is U-shaped. Then we have your average variable cost curve, which is also U-shaped and rising. Now, the supply curve of the firm should be such that the minimum, if this red horizontal line is the price at which it has to sell, this should be the minimum price at which it should produce. If the price goes below this line, which I am showing, this means that the firm should not be producing anything, means its output should be zero. But if the price is at this particular point, then the rising portion, this red dark line of your marginal cost curve, becomes the firm's short-run supply curve. If the price goes below this, that is if P is less than AVC, then we call it as the shutdown point, that is the firm should not be producing anything. Only if this price is above your minimum average variable cost, the firm should be producing, and the rising portion of the marginal cost above this level of price is called as the short-run supply curve, because the firm will keep on making profits. The other is the long-run supply. In long run, the firm, there is no fixed cost because all costs are variable. So in long run, the firm pays nothing if it does not operate because everything is variable. Therefore, the supply function is again given by part of the marginal cost function, which is lying above the long run average cost curve. See, there is a difference. In short run supply curve, we were saying the marginal cost curve, even if it is lying below average cost, but lying above the average variable cost, that will compound to your short run supply curve. But in long run, since there is no variable cost, therefore the rising portion, the portion which is above the minimum of the long run average cost curve, will be the supply curve. So a firm's long run supply function is, how is it given? It says if the price is less than the minimum of the LAC. Remember, long run average cost curve is also U-shaped. Minimum point, minimum efficient scale of production. So if the price is below the minimum efficient scale of production, then the optimum output is zero. The firm should not be producing anything. It is only when your price is greater than the minimum, at least equal to the minimum average cost curve, that therefore the rising portion of your marginal cost curve will be your supply curve. So, a firm's long-run supply function is the increasing part, that is the rising part of its long-run marginal cost curve, which is above the minimum of the long-run average cost. Let's see this. Let us say if this MC, this light pink line, is your long-run, short-run marginal cost curve. This is your average total cost in long run. Minimum is at this point where MC is equal to AC. So this line, this red line which is rising, is your long run supply curve. If the price falls below this point, the firm will not be producing. So once your margin, when the price is equal, at least equal, the price should be equal to the minimum of average total cost curve, and after this point the rising portion of the marginal cost curve is the long run supply curve. Right? So that is the difference between short run and long run supply curve. But remember, marginal cost curve is the rising portion of the marginal cost curve. Right? In short run, above average variable cost, and in long run, above minimum of average total cost curve. So this is the firm's long run supply curve. Right? So when firm, because here the firm will come and produce and sell because its price is more than its average total cost of production. Below this, because the firm's average total cost of production is greater than the price, the firm will exit. The firms will not produce anything. Okay, now let us do a small assessment to recap whatever we have done. The first question is, if a firm's marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost, if MR is more than MC, then what should the firm do? Increase output, decrease output, keep output the same, or collect any additional information? What should the firm do if its marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost? We know the profit maximization is when marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. In such a situation, what should be the answer? A. The firm should increase the output in order to increase the profits. Now, just a small assessment back of your supply curve. The short-run supply curve for a price-taking firm, that is a firm which is taking the price from the market, is its marginal cost curve above the minimum point on what? In short run, above the minimum point of what point is your supply curve? Average variable cost, demand curve, average total cost curve, or average fixed cost? Which curve's minimum point do we see when we want to derive the short-run supply curve? That is average variable cost curve. And what will be the long-run supply curve? Marginal cost for what? The rising portion after the minimum of average cost curve. So that's the difference between both. Right? Remember, in short-run supply curve, minimum of average variable cost, and after that the rising portion of your marginal cost is the supply curve. In long run, since there is no variable cost, the minimum point of your average cost, after that whatever is the rising portion of your MC is your long run supply curve. So let us summarize today's lecture. We have talked about that profit maximization equilibrium of a firm can be obtained either by using total approach or marginal approach. Then we said what are the two conditions of profit maximization? Where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue and marginal cost rises after cutting marginal revenue. Then what is your short-run supply curve? It is the rising portion of your marginal cost curve. What rising portion? After your average variable cost is minimum, after that whatever is the rising portion of your MC is your short-run supply curve. What is long-run supply curve? It is the rising portion of MC above the minimum long-run average cost curve. So we have understood that of how a firm maximizes or determines its profit maximizing level of output. This finishes off with our unit of cost analysis. In the next unit which we start, we will be talking about the markets and the theory of the firms. And there we will be extensively using the profit maximization conditions of the firm, that is MC is equal to MR, to determine the level of output at which it should produce. Till then, learners, have a nice time and happy learning.